We are live. Of course, we can't go live on X for some stupid reason, but hey, let's remove that so we don't disrupt everything else that's going on here. And speaking of disrupt, today on It's Time to Lead Different, we're going to be talking about disruption. I've had the privilege of doing a couple of keynotes recently here in Queensland and over in Broome, Western Australia, and the hot topic was disruption. So let's talk about this disruption as a concept first, and then I'm going to share with you how the disruption flow works and then how you can make that work for your business, especially from a leadership point of view. We've certainly been having this as conversations with lots of our clients, as well as how do we embrace disruption as a methodology. If we understand how disruption works, then we can make it work for us. So we're going to dive into all that here today in the next half an hour. And I want to start to talk with the concept of disruption. If you look at, let me see if I can bring this up for you guys. I think here we go. Let's do this. And let's go here. And I'll stand here. So first and foremost, let's talk about the way the world is right now. Before, we used to live in predictive cycles of 10 years. There'd be 10 years of this and 10 years of that. And so with this predictability, there was, it was easier to plan and map things out and process change and transform from one fixed state to the next. But we don't live in that world anymore. So first and foremost, please understand, we do not live in that world at all anymore. Because if you go back 5 years ago now, holy crap, can you believe it was 5 years ago? There was this thing called the pandemic. Now, forgetting about why it happened or how it happened, the fact is that it happened. And then when the pandemic happened, a lot of people, as I would speak to them, they go, oh my God, I just can't wait for things to get back to normal. But then we soon realized that things were not going to get back to normal. And then people going, oh, well, I guess this is just the new normal then. And then 2 years later, this thing called AI popped its head out and said, hey, I'm here. Although AI had been around for about 60 years in different formats, but we could finally talk to it. We humanized AI with ChatGPT and everything when it first came out, and obviously the subsequent platforms that are available today now. And then we're going, oh, well, maybe this is the new normal now. Then no, now agentic AI has come out. We have what we call the pandemic hangover. So all that money that was given away during the pandemic, we are paying for now in life and business. Which is why economies are tough around a lot of places. And so what we started to realize is that this isn't the new normal, this is just the next normal. Now, here we are also another year later, and we have trade wars going on and, different elections happening around the world, which are changing countries and governments and economies around the world. And so if you look at the tariffs and everything that's happening with the trade wars that are going on, it's not reducing innovation, it's redirecting it. But this is once again another disruption to supply chains, to where people normally would get their products and services from are looking elsewhere now. So this is just the next normal. And then I assure you, quantum computing, climate change, digital currencies, you name it, all the stuff that's here and being talked about will come along and disrupt things again. So the important part to understand here is that disruption is the new change. Okay, let me say that again. Disruption is the new change. Now, the other thing to understand is that these waves of change, these waves of disruption are coming faster and faster and faster. So when everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. But when everything's being disrupted, then is anything being disrupted anymore? So what's left if there's a disruption one wave after another, what's left? Well, just a constant state of evolution. So we are reaching now this, whether they call it singularity, whatever you want to call it, is this constant state of evolution where everything's just going to keep evolving, all right? And so there'll be no longer these waves of disruption happening. It'll just be a constant state of evolution. So how do you set your organization up to not only survive in that, but thrive in that world? Well, we need to understand disruption itself and how does it happen? So let me just bring up the other whiteboard here. And I will share with you how disruption actually happens. I started studying disruption a while ago, actually, when I realized that this was what was happening around the world. And I created what we refer to at Circle Leadership as the disruption flow cycle. So let me just bring the whiteboard back up for you guys. So one is I'm going to run through the disruption flow cycle for you, so you can see how disruption actually works. Then we're going to talk about how to apply that to your own business. Right? So the first thing that happens in a disruption flow cycle is actually an interruption. It all starts with an interruption. Okay, there's an initial interruption. That interruption happens by somebody deciding to ask an epic question about their business or their industry. So someone comes along and asks an epic question. Now, what is an epic question? An epic question is a big, massive type question. When was the last time you asked a big or massive question about your business or your industry? Because what we want to be able to do with that big epic question here and to create the interruption is to challenge the isness of our business. Oops. What I call the isness of our business. And to explain this is when I talk to people, they go, Dave, you don't understand how it is in our business. You don't understand how it is in our industry. So the interruption must first challenge the isness of your business, right? Because what it's actually doing is challenging the old model, or you can call it the existing model if you wish, the old model of our business. Okay. So you need to start asking epic questions about your business and your industry that challenge the isness. What do we hold to be true about our industry or our business? And we need to challenge that. Because if you're not going to challenge it, I assure you somebody else is going to be asking those epic questions. Right? So this is where the interruption begins. The first stage of a disruption flow is the interruption. Somebody starts to ask epic questions. What if that person driving past me there, who's heading in the same direction where I need to go, I could actually send them a message and say, hey, can you pick me up? I'll pay you if you pick me up and drop me off over there. Instead of sitting there going, well, how do I normally get someone to come pick me up and drop me somewhere? What if I could just message them directly? That's kind of how ride sharing began, right? So the first thing is the interruption. Then what that interruption does is actually it starts to lead to the actual disruption itself. So the next stage in the disruption flow cycle is actually the disruption. And this here is where we actually end up discovering a new model, a new way of doing business. Right? So we discover, this is what we call the discovery. So we discover a new model that actually, what does it do? Well, actually, we've got to implement it first. So we discover and implement the new model that actually renders this model here obsolete. So the epic questions that create the interruption to challenge the isness of our old model lead us to discovering and implementing a new model, which is where the disruption begins. And that new model makes the old model obsolete. Okay. So then what happens next then, after we've created this new model that makes the old model obsolete, after we've discovered it and implemented it, is the last phase, which is the eruption. Now, there are two key eruptions that happen here. First one is that you're going to become a trailblazer, of course. And one of my old Clarisms is fundamentally this, that trailblazers end up with arrows in their backs, but they get the trail named after them. So if you understand that when you set out to be a trailblazer in your industry and change and create a new model that makes the old model obsolete, the first eruption you're going to face is resistance. People are going to try and resist the new model because your new model is compromising their old model. So your new model is compromising how they make money. Because when we talk about models, it's their business model. You've created a new business model that makes the old business model obsolete. So when you're doing that, you're now challenging the way that organization made or makes or made money. And so they're going to be upset about that. All right. If you, once again, simply with Uber, do you think when that model first came out that the taxi companies were thrilled about it? No, there was actually violence in the streets and there was lawsuits and everything like that to try and change this, because this new model of, public transportation, if you wish, compromised or challenged the existing model that was in place and how those organizations made money. And so there was a massive resistance to that. And you will face that in your business. If you challenge the isness of your business, which is then going to challenge the isness of everybody else in your industry's business, be prepared for resistance to the new model. But the second eruptions, so let me use this to new model, let's just be very clear here. But the second eruption is the exciting one. This is where imitation or copycats. Because what then starts to happen is this new model, people start to accept it, or other people come into the market now because you've expanded the market and go, hey, that's a really great idea. We're going to start to do that in our industry. Okay. So all of a sudden, then you're going to have imitations. How many different ride shares are there today? From Uber, Lyft, Didi, Chauffeur, even the taxi companies now have an app. So once we got past the initial resistance to it and people realize, shoot, this is the new model now, people start to imitate it, right? So this is the disruption flow cycle. It starts with somebody asking epic questions that interrupts the isness of the existing model or the old model, which then leads them to discovering a new model that makes the old model obsolete, and they implement that. And then once that's underway and the new model's there, the people who are the old model are going to try and resist it because you're compromising the way that they make money. But eventually other people will enter in the market going, oh, that's a really cool model, let's do that. And you get copycats, right? So as you choose to be a trailblazer into this new world that you're with this new model that you're going to create, don't be surprised when people get upset about it, right? But here's the kicker for all of us, is that we have two choices. Over here where you can see me, two choices in our business. You can either find a way to put yourself out of business, which is just putting your old model out of business, or you can allow someone else to come along and put you out of business, or take significant market share. You choose whichever way you want to look at it, but it could be significantly damaging to your business. Because what I want to help you to do is to understand here is that you need to set your organization up to respond at worst, lead at best. But if by 2026 you're still reacting to what's going on around you, you're going to be left behind. If you want to survive, let alone thrive into the next normal, you need to be thinking about this disruption flow cycle for yourself and your business. Because this is, I can't tell you what the future's, people think, oh, you're a futurist. No, I'm not a futurist. And I made this very clear at one of my most recent keynotes. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I can sure tell you how it will happen. And this is how it will happen. This will be constantly happening time and time again. Now, the interesting part about this also is once you've created the eruption, doesn't mean, okay, we've disrupted the market, we've created a new model, we can just rest on our laurels now, because then somebody's going to come along and interrupt that model. So if you look at organization, just like Apple, for example, if we sit there and go, well, how do most of us listen to our music today? And, if you sit there and I look on my phone here and I go to Spotify. So I listen to Spotify, right? Or listen to my music on Spotify. But wasn't Apple the one who disrupted the music industry with iTunes? And we used to all go to iTunes and our iPods and whatever and get our music that way. How the hell did a disruptive company like Apple allow Spotify to come into the market? When we thought, oh, we've disrupted the music world now. We get all our songs on, through Apple Music. And then Spotify came along, and now most of the world listen to their music through Spotify or similar platforms now because there's copycats of that now. Just because you've disrupted an industry and or your business doesn't mean you can stop or rest on your disruptive laurels. You have to continue to be disruptive. And my challenge to Apple as an organization is now they're really focused on innovation and they're tweaking. And but when was the last time Apple really disrupted a market? I mean, they certainly disrupted it with the iPod, the iPhone, iTunes, the music industry. But then it's lost its disruptive nature and it's more focused just on innovation, it seems. Now, I have no understanding of what they're working on right now. But as an organization, what I see outside of it is that we've allowed somebody else to become the disruptor in the industry that they were dominating. So for you, let me ask you this. Are you waiting for some other business to come along and rub your nose in a future that you were destined to own but chose to do nothing about it? So, because I know that there's times when I've had a really great idea and I haven't done anything with it, but then a year later I see somebody else doing it and say, oh, geez, I had that idea. The universe will not wait if you have an idea and you do not execute on it. Right? Somebody else will come along and do it. And also, please understand for yourself and your organization that the person who may disrupt your industry, if it's not you, will not be the ones who you think it is. It's not likely to be your competitors. Most of the biggest and greatest disruptions in the past 10 or 15 years have come from pissed off consumers. Pissed off consumers are your new competitors. Two kids in a dorm room somewhere who are pissed off about something, or somebody who's, just tired of standing around in the rain waiting for it to be picked up, to be taken to a hotel, said, man, what if we could message that person in that car there and they could come pick us up? It wasn't people in the transportation industry who created Uber. It wasn't people in the accommodation industry who created Airbnb. And it certainly wasn't people in the entertainment industry who created Netflix. These were just pissed off consumers trying to find a new way or a new model that would make the old model obsolete. So don't even look at your competitors. It's probably not them. So if it's not going to be you, I wonder who it's going to be. But pissed off consumers are your new competitors, because the price of entry into creating a business today is very low. The price of entry to come out with an idea and starting to execute on it is very low. So this is your opportunity, is to be the one to create the interruption, the disruption, and the eruption, but then be prepared that you have to continue that cycle. This is just the way it is now. There's your isness, that this is the disruption flow cycle, and it's going to keep going and accelerate. So how do you apply this to your business then? Let's look at it in a direct relationship to your own organization. Okay? So if we take this here, this is fundamentally how you can look at your own organization. If you work at, first and foremost, you have to work at what the next mission of your organization is. Who does your organization need to become in the next 3 years to evolve and stay relevant in the hearts and minds of the people that you choose to serve? And this is where we have to imagine a business that does not yet exist. This is the business that would put your existing business out of business. So when we work with our clients to help them work out what their mission is, it's the next evolution of your organization. Is your organization today the same as it was 3 years ago? Probably not. And then can it stay the same today into the next 3 years? Probably not. So business is a series of evolutions. So what's the next evolution of your business? Because your mission is there to evolve you and your organization to stay relevant in the hearts and minds of the people that you choose to serve. It is who your business needs to become in the next 3 years. And by becoming that organization, it takes the old model, right, and then creates a new model that makes the old model obsolete. So here's what will happen over the next 3 years. In your very first year, this is the year of interruption. You have to challenge everything you hold to be true about your business, right? You have to look at what's the team that we must have, what's the brand that we must have, what is the clients that we must have, what is the finance we must have, the systems and operations, and possibly something else that you will need in the next 12 months. You're going to challenge everything about the team you have, everything about your brand, everything about your clients, everything about your finances, everything about your systems and operations, because you need to challenge the isness of your business. So the first year is actually to create the interruption by asking the epic questions. The second year, of course, then, is to create the actual disruption, is to implement the new model, is to really to start to embed, oops, if I can spell properly, is really about embedding the new model, right? So this is about embed new model. So by now we should have the right team in place. right? We should have the brand we need. We should have the clients that we need for this new model, the financial, the systems and operations, and whatever else it might be, which then leads us to the last year, of course, which is then to create the eruption. Be prepared for the two things to happen, right? Is that this is the team we must have now, and the brand we must have now, and the clients we must have now, and the finance and the systems and operations and such that we need to have that will create the resilience for the resistance, and prepare ourselves for copycats. So we have created escape velocity as we have first mover capabilities into that future. But the funny thing about this is the way that we go about this is actually you're going to reverse engineer this. You're going to start by working out what that new mission is first, then what would the eruption look like, and then that will then lead you to the disruption of the team and brand and so on you need to have, which then should lead you to going, here's where we need to start. Okay, so in your business, you're actually going to start with a new model, then reverse engineer it back to the old model, and then create the interruption and work your way forward up through this process to become the organization that you're capable of, to evolve and stay relevant in the hearts and minds of the people that you choose to serve. So this is how you can take the disruption flow cycle and apply it to your own organization. How do we create a new model that makes the old model obsolete? Then how do we transform our organization into that new model? And then guess what? Once you've done that, there'll be a new mission. And then you'll go through the same process again. And then after that, there'll be a new mission, and you go through that same process again. Because we need to constantly be in a state of evolution. If your organization doesn't have evolution as the natural state where you can have growth spurts along the way, you're going to fall behind. If you're just so focused on growth right now and your business growth, and growth is important, I'm not saying it, but growth alone as a strategy is going to be the end of your business. You will grow into irrelevance, grow into obscurity, or grow out of business faster than anything. In a world where constant evolution is happening and you're focused on growing, you're worrying about being more for more and more instead of becoming more and being more of that, and then becoming more and being more of that, and so on. So you need to make evolution the natural state of your business and have growth spurts along the way. You can't just focus on business growth alone anymore. You have to make your organization set up to constantly evolve and stay relevant, and then you can have growth opportunities along the way. So you can increase your capacity as you increase your capability. So evolution is about steadily and progressively increasing our capabilities, thus our capacity for greatness expands. So you can take the disruption flow cycle that's happening around you, apply that to your own business, create a disruption, the interruption, disruption, and eruption in your own industry by doing that to your business first, and make evolution the natural state. In a world where everything's evolving, you will also be evolving, and therefore you can respond at worst, lead at best, and you'll never have to react to what's going on around you. So there it is there. That is the disruption flow cycle. And that is how to apply it to your own business in your organization. Just, once again, this can sound really doomy and gloomy at times, but please understand this is absolutely critical for our organizations today, especially if we want to evolve the world of work. Because today's workforce is ready for tomorrow's workplace, but it's just not here. So you need to start to build the organization that's going to attract and retain the best talent. Even with AI and automation, you're going to need less, but you're still going to need the best. And if you're in an organization that is heading towards stagnation, they're going to see it very quickly. But if they can see that you're constantly evolving your organization and yourself, and you're creating this organization that they can see the future in, they can then see themselves having a future in that organization. And they can see that they can believe in you as a leader because you have a vision of the world that's bigger than all of us combined, and you understand how to apply this disruption flow cycle so we can respond at worst, lead at best into the future. This is how we need to look at our organizations going forward. So if anybody, after you've watched this, if you've seen this, please, if you would like to ask any questions or comments, put them in there. I will respond to them after the fact. But I urge you to consider how the future will happen. None of us can predict what's going to happen in the next 3 years, the next 12 months, let alone the next 90 days would be a wild ass guess. But you can start to understand how the future will happen, then you can set your business up to be prepared for how it will happen. Because what must be accomplished becomes mandatory. How and when we get there is arbitrary. Because even that could be year 1, year 2, year 3. That could be 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. If things happen faster, you have the ability to accelerate if you need to, or if new things come up that you can start to leverage, you can respond to that. Or you could be leading the market. So this is why it's important to understand the cycle and understand how it applies to us so that we can position ourselves to be in the same flow as the world is. And if the world's in a constant state of evolution, our business needs to be set up for that. So thanks, guys, for tuning in to It's Time to Lead Different. My good friend Collin Dayley, the Circle Leader for USA, was unavailable to make today. So you got me only today. So hopefully that was insightful. Please, once again, share your comments, thoughts in below, and we will see you next week for It's Time to Lead Different. And please understand that together we can evolve the world of work.